So welcome to episode number 7 of Growth Ripples, and it's my pleasure to welcome today Susan Lawrence. Susan is actually an expert in the field of leadership. She does a lot of coaching and has done so for many years. And I had the pleasure of actually working with Susan many years ago at a prior, consulting firm before she joined Growth Wave just a few weeks ago. So welcome, Susan, to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Jan.
And maybe just a short intro around, what you're most passionate about in the space of leadership, just for those that don't know you.
So for me, leadership is something that I sort of learned by trial and error, being a young manager a while ago, many moons ago. And I think later on when I did work at Hay Group Corn Ferry, I was introduced to a framework for management and different styles of leadership. And I wished I had that then, understanding how to create a climate and a culture for your team that really gets them working at their optimum. Yeah. So my passion, I guess, or focus lies around helping emerging leaders and established leaders to harness the talent of people and really try and get them performing at their optimum.
Great. Thanks, Susan. So, yeah, a lot to unpack there. But as we talked about before the actual show, we did go out, and we often go out to people on LinkedIn to ask what kind of topics that they want to hear about, and understanding a bit more how to avoid micromanaging people was something that sort of resonated for quite a few. So we'll talk about that for probably the next 10 or so minutes, and really drawing on, I guess, both of our experiences, because while we have worked together, we have quite a different range of experiences, which hopefully the listeners will enjoy as well. So maybe on that point, starting from, rather than defining it, but like for you, Susan, working with so many leaders that you have and so many different organizations, what kind of things do you look out for before you identify someone as engaging in micromanaging behavior?
So how you're doing it, or what I've observed when the feedback has been that people have or team employees have a micromanager, is that they ask you excessively for updates is one key trait on where you're at with that work or that project. Usually the standard that you're working to never really meets their expectations. Down in small details and correcting your work instead of sort of seeing that there might be, two ways to deliver the same communication or outcome that are the same. And really, I think a big telltale when I work with clients is when there's high turnover. I'm usually pretty sure that somewhere.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, that certainly resonates for my coaching and leadership work as well. And I was actually, as you were talking, Susan, I was just reflecting that I imagine, and at least for me, when I first got that feedback that perhaps I'm a bit of a micromanager at times, that I wasn't really aware of it. Do you find that with leaders that you're working with, that people sometimes are aware, but often they're not aware of that kind of behavior?
I just think you adopt a style, and if it's worked for you in the past to a certain extent, then there really probably hasn't been the appetite or the need for change. When I think you move into a business that perhaps just delivers the same old results, or falls short of results time after time, it is a factor about some of the leaders that might be worth exploring further, because you have a lot of innovation and creativity and people sparking with ideas and high productivity when you take that.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess also what I'm hearing there, and just reflecting on my own journey as a leader, is we tend to kind of follow in terms of what we've seen before us and what we like. So in terms of how we like to be led. So I was just thinking about actually a leader that I really enjoyed working with, but I remember talking to colleagues years after saying, this leader was really hard to work with, and said, they really, pace setting or micromanaging, depending on your kind of terminology. And I was like, I don't remember that. But I was in a very early stage of my career, and actually seeing someone kind of role model and set the standard helped me immensely. So then I think what I ended up taking away was, oh, that's how you lead. And I enjoyed it. So therefore everyone else must enjoy that way of leading as well, or being led, I should say. And therefore my teams probably suffered as a result. Do you see that in others that you coach?
I do. I think it can lead to burnout if it isn't a style of
Mm,
management. Obviously, in your case, it did.
yeah.
But somebody who perhaps doesn't need as much scaffolding or doesn't
Mm,
want much checking in or likes to frame up their day in their own way, it can be very stifling and very diminishing for people.
yes.
Um,
Yeah.
that you're trying to keep up. And I think we were talking the other day, and I was telling you about a micromanager colleague that I had, direct
Mm,
colleague, and his team was often fudging figures and KPIs to try and keep up with the standards. So it
right.
can work for people, but it can solicit or bring out some negative traits in staff if
Yeah.
it is with them. So you really do need to, to get feedback from your people and find out, does this work for you? What doesn't work for you? To really frame up that they've got the right work environment to perform in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess again, what really stands out to me, what you're sharing there, Susan, is about adjusting your style depending on the team that you have, and probably also the experience that you have. Because I know if I had that leader that we just talked about, my experience, if I had that manager today, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much because I'm much more capable than what I was back, 15 years ago or so. So yeah, I can certainly resonate with that. And I guess what I'm also hearing you share there, Susan, is there's a whole bunch of things that are costs in terms of potential burnout and turnover. But then there's also the element of people trying to cover up or fudge results, as you said, because people might be scared of what are the implications if I don't meet that standard that my leader is sort of setting for me.
That's right. And you have clarity around, if you have enough clarity around what you're at work for and the
Mm,
goal of the team, then you really don't need someone when you are a more experienced, established adult in the workforce. You really don't need someone breathing down your neck and checking up on you because it does. It just sort of makes you feel like you're not as capable as you probably are.
yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. So for those, that might be watching or listening to this, Susan, like if they're concerned that they're micromanaging, or maybe they've even received feedback that they're micromanaging, what are your top tips to avoid that in the future, or stop yourself if you are a micromanager?
It's hard to change. Um,
Okay.
and it's daunting. So I think that working one on one with a coach or undertaking a program with your leadership cohort to sort of identify the different management styles that you have in the team is always beneficial and a good starting point.
Yeah.
If if you are a micromanager or you have a micromanager, then making a time to actually sit down and provide feedback in the nicest possible way, the
Mm,
good news, the news that's not so great, um, is always a good starting point too, to clarify that there's an issue there. And then taking steps to, as I said, like some of the keys are really clarifying the requirements of people's roles for them,
mm,
really what the team is trying to achieve, and really connecting, understanding the overarching strategy and why the company exists, and connecting people to that,
mm.
and letting them get on with the business of doing the tasks of their job, and working out constantly how you can support people rather than do it for them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because again, I'm reflecting, I guess, on my own journey here. And when I first heard the feedback that I was engaging in micromanaging kind of behavior, it took me by surprise, because here I was thinking, oh, I'm actually doing, a great job as a leader. Here I am checking up on my team and how they're going on all these challenging projects. I'm doing that regularly. I'm asking if I can step in and help them, and I'll take it away from them if they're not doing a good enough job. And so I was sort of in this impression of, oh, I must be doing some great things for the team, without really realizing what effect I was having on people, because I'm sure now, as I say it, it's pretty obvious for any listener that that's micromanaging and it's stifling for people. But I think for people that are great, well-meaning new leaders, sometimes what they think is great leadership is not actually what our team members need.
That's exactly right, Jan. And it's just double checking. Just double. So if for me, I'm pretty good at asking for help if I need it. Not everybody is. So it is worth checking in and seeing if there's anything that you can do for them or to support them or to make work, a better, more efficient place for them. And they have the tools of the trade and all of that. But then maybe make it clear that you're both sort of of the understanding that if I need your help or you need their help, you'll ask.
Yeah.
Framing something, I often find micromanagers frame up is, look, don't take this the wrong way. I'm just trying to help. And most people just die on the inside when they hear that. If they, I'm not asking for it, so I probably don't need your well-meaning.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, like it's where good intent doesn't always equal good impact. And I guess that's what you and I really focus on with leaders around how do you turn a good intent into a impact that you're actually wanting to have? Because the last thing any leader wants, I'm sure, is to have a negative impact on their team, to lose people to burnout or to resignations. I guess I was also wondering, Susan, if we have got anyone listening or watching that actually have a micromanager themselves, what tips would you give to those individuals to kind of either address that or maybe help their leader see a different way to leading them?
I think communication is key, and I think that we'd probably all agree that communication is key for any time conflict arises. But I think it's time to actually sit down with your leader and asking them to listen, whether you have a weekly or fortnightly one-to-one or a time where you sort of catch up or make a time to catch up, and just actually articulate what's happening for you. Because I think the only thing you can do is put your information in the dish at any given time and then, see how they respond to that, and then give them a chance to sort of or work out a way that you'll communicate when it's happening, because they're not going to change overnight. It's going to take practice. And that's even if they want to change or have the incentive to change. So I think that does help people identify as well if they are in the right work environment for them. The company isn't undertaking some sort of training or development for their leaders, and that is something that's happening. And it's not the sort of leader that's potentially open to feedback, or feedback's not a common thing in that company. I don't want to sound like it's doom and gloom, but those one or all of those factors have to be there for some sort of change to happen eventually. Yeah. And either way, you're going to, or the employee is going to, whether that's the environment that's going to harness the best out of them.
That's so true. I think, particularly in the current market for talent, there's so many organizations looking for great talent. So if organizations and leaders are not enabling and allowing people to breathe and actually do the work they want to do, there's every chance that they're going to go find another place that will offer them that. I guess maybe just to kind of wrap things up, one last thing that I wanted to share, Susan, which I don't know if this resonates for you, but in terms of my development as a leader, I found, similar to my, intent around doing great leadership, when I actually wasn't doing that so much when I was micromanaging, I very much would always ask my team for feedback, but I found that a lot of my team wouldn't give me the feedback. And what I found actually helped sort of bridge that gap and stop that was actually being firstly quite vulnerable about, here are the things on my journey as a leader. These are the things that I think I'm fairly good at. These are the things that I'm still trying to improve, or that I've gotten feedback in the past and I'm really trying to improve on them. And I really invite you to give me feedback if I'm sort of slipping back or I'm not managing in a way that makes sense for you. And I found that really opened up a lot of the team members that I had as I went on that journey. Like, does that resonate for you as well as in your leadership journey?
It does. And also, I think a bit similar to you, we've learned through trial and error, but not every leader sort of is in that boat exactly at the same time. So I think in hindsight, a good point too, if you are a new or a young leader, find a mentor in the leadership team or the senior leadership team that you actually think emulates the behaviours that you want to adopt when or if you're in that leadership space, and try and fast track yourself that way. Or if you are a leader working with a leader who has more experience, don't be so pig-headed that you won't take advice and feedback. I would give my younger self that advice. I used to sort of think, well, that's not. But sometimes there is wisdom in, mostly there is wisdom in experience. And
Absolutely.
when you're new, to want to make such a mark and such a unique impact, that you do have a bit of, I think I just sort of know it all. And actually, had I someone a lot more experienced than me back in the day, I just would have got places a lot quicker, and I got to be a much more effective leader and bring out the potential in others a lot quicker.
Yeah, great. I think that's a great sort of finish there, Susan, around just sharing some final advice for people. And yeah, I can completely concur with that, around making sure you're just being open, and doesn't mean you kind of take on whatever everyone else is doing, but just hearing the feedback, hearing the experiences can help, really speed up that development journey. So Susan, it's been a pleasure, and look forward to having you on future Growth Ripples podcasts. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan.